Hello everyone, I am Taureor and welcome to Running RPG, my show with advice for dungeon masters and game masters in general. And if you've missed the intro episode, I am inspired by, and this show is modeled after, what Matthew Mercer and Matthew Colville do. So if you're into that kind of thing, go and check them out. Although you probably know them if you are into that kind of thing. Anyway, today we're going to talk about miniatures and cheaper alternatives. Well, miniatures are great, wonderful options for battle. They're not necessary in most RPGs, but they are quite useful in at least some of them. However, miniatures are very expensive, especially those, very high quality ones. And they are even more expensive relatively if you're a kid or if you live in a poorer country. For example, I live in Poland. In Poland, we, on average, we earn several times less than the guys in the US, where most of the miniatures are manufactured, as far as I know. And the prices don't change, they cost the same, but relatively, as we earn less, they cost much more. So I have been running RPGs for a very long time with breaks, but when I started, I couldn't afford miniatures. There are several alternatives, though. We're going to go from expensive to cheap. We will just start with cheaper alternatives, and we will end at basically free miniatures that just require some work on your part. So, the first thing you can do if you can't afford or don't want to buy or spend your money on regular miniatures, you can buy some board games that feature miniatures. For example, Descent or Rune Wars feature several miniatures that you can use in your RPG games. For example, this is a miniature from Descent or Rune Wars, I don't remember, one of them. It's a very well detailed wizard, and you can even paint them to make them look nicer. Of course you can't paint them, that's kind of obvious, but this is a painted one from the same game. So that's one option, and for example, Descent also has some decent monsters, like this dragon here, and you get several miniatures for a pretty low price. Another option is old battle games. You can often buy some person's collection if they are getting out of the hobby. For example, this goblin is from Lord of the Rings battle game, and they were actually sold on the cheap in Poland, so I got several of them. It was a periodic type of thing that was trying to get people hooked, but the first issue was very cheap, so I got several goblin miniatures for that. Another option is to repurpose your old toys or someone else's old toys. You can even use Lego people and Lego blocks to build your battle map and your miniatures. However, they might, feel a bit off, detract from the seriousness of the game. That kind of depends on how serious your party is and if you have any Lego blocks and Lego people lying around in your house. Another thing is other kinds of old toys. For example, this is a toy dinosaur I had when I was a kid. I can use it as a mini for a basilisk or a bullet or something. Don't shy away from this stuff, it will save you a lot of money. Or, for example, this is a toy knight, again, from when I was a kid. He's a bit too big in comparison to the other miniatures, but I've painted him and I sometimes use him as a Goliath or something like that. So yeah, be flexible. Look out through your look out for opportunities when you're looking through your toys of old. Well, it's nice to give them a second life, right? Another thing, and this is the cheaper option. Another even cheaper option is to go with pawns. Pathfinder, notably, makes sets of points. Points, goddammit. Pawns, of course, is what I mean. Sets of pawns. I don't remember the publisher of Pathfinder games right now, but you should see it on the screen, and that there will be a link to their website in the description. The Pathfinder Pawns are basically thick cardboard with good quality printed heroes or monsters on them that come with some stands you can stick them into, and they work just as normal miniatures would, and they are several times cheaper. Now, what if you don't have any money to spare at all? You can't buy even those cheap Pathfinder Pawns. Well, there are several options. Well, you can of course print out tokens, but that's not the same. They don't have they're not 3D. They don't stand on your board and look nice. Well, there are several sources that you can use to get upright printable miniatures. There's this guy at Printable Miniatures. He has a Patreon and he makes those. The selection is pretty limited. I don't think he has been doing it for that long, but he makes his own art and sets it to be printable as miniatures. And I think he has a Patreon, but I don't remember if everything is free or just some stuff is free. But certainly some of it is free. And finally, my favorite resource is Paper Friends. This is when I found it, I was truly amazed. And okay, I'm going to talk about the process of using such paper miniatures in a second. But basically, this is a guy that takes images of from various sources, even copyrighted, but it falls under fair use, especially since he's doing it non-profit. He's not making any money off of it. It's all free. And he resizes the images, sets them with sets them to be printable as miniatures, and puts them on his website. And the selection is amazing. When I went there, I downloaded around 400 files. I set them in a text editor to be easily printable, and I pretty much have 4,000 miniatures ready to be used. Well, not ready to be used, ready to be readied to be used. And what does it look like? For example, this is one of the printouts. As you can see, they are set to be cut out and bent. And you will need some high-grade paper. What I'm using is 280 grams per square meter, which is as thick as my printer can handle. But the thicker the paper, the easier they will be to, some other examples, the easier they will be to set and use, and they will look nicer, they will look more solid. So what you do is print them out on this high-grade paper, and I have upgraded my old brother printer with refillable ink cartridges, so I don't really have to factor in the cost of ink because it's negligible. And then you cut them out. You cut such a piece out. Then you bend it properly. Let me show you a bent one. Okay, so this is a cut-out fighter that is bent. And then you can glue them together to make them stand. Well, you will need book-binding glue. I think I'm not sure if that's the same thing you call tacky glue. Basically, this is a very strong glue for paper, much better than the thing kids use at school. And you can basically there are two base ways you can set those things. You can glue them like that, and then either cut around the figure to make it look nicer, or not do that. You can also set them like that, then you don't have to cut around, and there's less work to make them stand. But I think the first option looks nicer. So you glue them together. They look like that after this. This one's a bit too small, but I was experimenting with different sizes. And then you can even cut around the miniature, cut around the picture, to make it pop, to make it seem like it's more three-dimensional than it actually is. Yeah. And so what I did is I downloaded the files and I set them in a text document to format them properly, so I can fit more on one piece of paper and they have the exact size I want. Then I printed around 4,000 miniatures. I have not cut them all out, I have not glued them together, but I have them ready. And anytime I need a specific monster or NPC, I can just go through the pages, cut it out, glue it together, and I have my miniature. And it cost me virtually nothing, just the price of the paper, which isn't that much. And if you use high density paper, like I did, 280 grams per square meter, anything above 200 will do, kinda. Even the big ones will hold together. For example, this is a storm giant. I have not finished it yet, but see, it holds out nicely. It's not bending or anything. It's working great. So you will find all the links in the description below the video, and yeah, I hope I was helpful. If you don't have money, it shouldn't stop you. Just you'll need to work a little harder, because cutting these out is quite a bit of work. For example, you can get dedicated scissors that are for fingernails. You don't need to use them for that, just get new ones at the pharmacy or somewhere, and they are so small that it's much easier to cut out those shapes. And you don't need to cut them out, but if you do, they pop more on the battlefield and feel practically like 3D things. And that is pretty much all I have to say about cheap and free miniatures. I hope I was helpful. And again, you can find all the links in the description. And please consider supporting me on Patreon if I was indeed helpful. No obligation, just consider it. And that's about it. Thank you for watching the first episode of, what did I call it again? Running RPG. And meet me in the next one. Goodbye.